Testing, testing. Okay. Fine. Have you just arrived, sir? Welcome. Okay. And then you guys are all in pairs, so that's going to work. Fine. So, do you have all this software installed? Firefox, Django, Selenium, everything? Pronto? Okay, very good. All right, so we're about to make a start, so make sure you get a terminal ready. All right. Fantastic. Okay, welcome everyone. Oh, you've just arrived? Sir, please take a seat, and will you do some pair programming with the person you've just sat next to?
Yeah, I will do that.
Perfect.
On the guidebook schedule, they have...
Yes, yes, it happens.
There will be many more people.
Oh, really? You think?
It's wrong on the schedule. So
Well, yeah. So you think more people will come still?
yeah,
That's gonna be chaos! Okay. Well, what we can do is just to test that the installation has worked. Okay, this is a test-driven development tutorial. So what we're going to do is move into the very first test, and that will just make sure that all the software is installed. And if people are still arriving, there'll be a bit of faffing, so it'll start off. But anyway, welcome. Thank you for choosing my TDD workshop. We're going to try and make it as fun and as exciting as possible. TDD is awesome. My name is Harry. Welcome to you all. What are all your names? Brilliant names. Okay. Fine. So TDD workshop tutorial. What are we going to talk about? My name is Harry. You guys want to know why I'm giving a TDD workshop, I guess. How did that happen? I used to be a management consultant. It was rubbish. Then I did a degree in computer science, and then I fell in with a bunch of guys called Resolver Systems. And at Resolver Systems, they do extreme programming. Who's ever heard of extreme programming? Do you know what it is? Okay, pretty much everyone. Anyone ever tried it? Anyone done it? Yes? Yeah? What are you here for? You already know TDD, man. Come on. Okay, so extreme programming. Welcome. This is the TDD Web Development Workshop. Take a seat. Okay. If you haven't got these required software installations, sit yourself down next to someone who has and share their computer, please. So extreme programming. What's it all about? Who's read Dive into Python? Dive into Python, the book? Okay, you know that that tells us about TDD. That's where I first heard about it. And it says in chapter 10, there's this Roman numerals example where it goes, oh, you should learn about test-driven development. You write tests first, and it'll help you write your functions, and see how it works, and then you're definitely going to get it right, and it'll never break. And I went, wow, that's brilliant. That's really interesting. I love the idea of that. That sounds like a really good thing that everyone should do. And then what happened is I got my first client and my first project, and it had deadlines, and all the TDD good intentions went straight out the window, and I was like, wow, forget it, I don't have time for write tests, and besides, from my full 3 weeks of Python programming experience, I thought I was pretty fucking good, right? Ooh, excuse me. I thought I was pretty darned good. So I thought, yeah, I don't need tests, I'm awesome, I'm going to be fine. And you know what? I was fine. I was absolutely fine at first. Because at first it was just a small application. I built it from scratch. It's a Django website. Here's a screen, here's a screen. If I want to know whether it works, I go on and I click and I see if it works. If I make a change, I go and click on the website and the change is there. I mean, I can see, I can write code. I'm not an idiot. So I can write this code. It'll be fine. And then soon there was another page and another page. And the weeks passed, and then maybe after a month or two, and then pretty soon I had multiple inheritance overriding functions. I had meta classes. Because I was going to town, I was learning Python. It was fun. And after about 3 months of this, I just had a horrible, unwieldy mess. And I was terrified of making any changes because I was like, oh, I want to do a thing here, but I know I've overridden that class and the method is inheriting from it. So if I change this, it's going to change that over. Oh god, oh no, I think it should be. I'll do. Oh no, it's all broke. And then I couldn't find out because the website is massive by now, and I can't be clicking through every single page to check it. And my code just starts turning into this unwieldy nightmare, right? Maybe some of you have experienced something similar. So when I arrived at Resolver, I was open to the idea of testing as maybe a way of solving this. And so they said, okay, Harry, yeah, we do TDD here. What we're going to do is we're doing functional tests, and we do unit tests, and we unit test absolutely every single function, and we run them all. And I was like, what? This is going to take ages. Come on, we don't need to do this much testing, just a little bit of testing, and then it should be fine. And And so like every step of the way, I was like, oh, come on, I don't want to do tests. This is too much. We can do less, blah, blah, blah. But eventually they convinced me that the way they're doing it, it really does work. And I've actually seen it working. I've seen tests that save you from making stupid mistakes. I've seen tests pick up all sorts of regressions that you couldn't possibly have guessed. And we've now got a big application. It's taken us 3 years to build. We've got a test suite that takes 12 hours to run. So if you try and imagine what it would take to test that manually, you know, it is clearly saving us and doing some impossible things. So TDD, it works. That's my story. Good. What about you guys? Who knows already? Is anyone a beginner to Python? Really? Wonderful. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so I'm aiming this at beginners. So like you guys are the beginnerist beginners. And I want to make sure that we only go as fast as the slowest person. So there's no such thing as a stupid mistake. Make sure you ask questions. Don't get left behind. I've got a glamorous assistant over there, Peter, who will help as well. And we'll go through and make sure everyone understands it is meant for beginners. Anybody that's going to get a little bit bored, you can play around with Git. You can look up some documentation. There's all sorts of other things you can do while everybody else is helping out. And you're all pair programming. So preferably if you're a beginner, you're sat next to someone who's done Python before. You know, ask them what they're doing. Ask them, hey, why did you write this? Or how did that work? You know, you can learn from each other. What about Django? Who's never used Django? Okay, good. So this is absolutely designed as a tutorial for Django. My first version of this workshop actually takes the official Django tutorial and just adds tests. And what I'm doing now is I'm writing a book all about TDD, and I've started to use a different example, but it covers all the same stuff like views and models and urls.py, and we start from scratch. So it's the same basic principles. Find all the basics of Django and see how you can do tests for every single aspect. So that's what we're going to do today. What else? Anyone completely new to testing? Who's never done testing? Well, come on, at least all the people who've never done Python must have never done... Oh, actually, maybe that's not true. No, okay. Go draw a Venn diagram. Okay. Okay, good. And has anyone ever tried Selenium? Who has used Selenium in the past? Okay. Okay, fine. So you guys already know everything. You can just go home. That's fine. Okay, fine. So those are the rules. Yeah, make sure you ask questions. Like often I'll say, you know, here's the demonstration, and then you must type this, and this is the code, and then you run the test, and this will happen. And okay, so have you guys all got that? And then people go like this. And what they actually mean is, right, and they're just embarrassed. So please, when you're thinking, no, I don't have this, just say, no, I don't understand, and that's absolutely fine. And in fact, there's a prize for the very first person to ask a stupid question or say, no, I don't understand. I'll give you a discount token for my book, or a free book. I'm sure I can get a free book. I don't know if I can get a free book. I'll give you a discount token. Actually, I'm going to give everyone a discount token. But anyway, okay, the discount token's at the front, but you'll get one especially if you ask a stupid question. Right, good. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Who are the late arrivals in here? Anybody else who arrived late? So I just wanted to make sure that if you haven't got the required software installations, which should be on this screen here, which will wake up, that you just sit next to someone who has got the software, because we haven't got time to install it all from scratch. Okay, fine. So, assuming we're all ready to start, I'd like to go ahead. I feel like there's some more little intros. Have you guys got any questions already? No, nothing? Harry, okay. When are you going to calm down? I'm not. I'm in front of a bunch of people, and it makes me nervous, so I'm going to talk fast and loud. This is going to happen. Okay, welcome, welcome. Come in, come in. There's room right up here at the front on my table if you like. Okay. So what are we going to do? We're going to build an application. The application I've chosen for my book, which I'll tell you all about later, is a lists app. Like in the old days, all the tutorials about web development did forums. Nowadays, or blogs or polls, but nowadays the cool thing that all the cool kids are doing is list applications, to-do lists. Hooray! So that's what I'm doing because I follow the crowd. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to build a lists application using Django. It's a good example because fundamentally it's quite simple. It's just a list of things, but you can make it more and more complicated. You can add notes, you can add mark complete, you can assign lists to users, you can have shared lists, you can have JavaScript, you can go to town. So it starts simple, it gets complicated, perfect example. And what I'd like to do is, if you guys have done this checkout, we're going to work inside this TDD workshop folder. you should find there's a PDF in there, which is kind of the handouts for the book. Have you guys all got that, the PDF? Can you see that? Hands up who's got the PDF. Who's got the PDF? PDF. And then you guys back there, have you not got the PDF? So just in case you need to, I'm going to go through and do live coding all the way through this, and the handout, which is a PDF, has got all of the code examples and all of the expected command line output. So when I demonstrate something, I go screen, screen, screen. Okay, and now look on page 3, you'll see this is what it's supposed to work like. And then if it goes wrong, you can ask questions. So what's the very first thing it says to do on there? What? I can't remember. What do we start with? Like, what's in the handout?
We start with press start.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to leave all of those. And we're going to do... Can everyone see all this? Is that okay? Just about legible. I've tried to bring the bottom up because it always ends up at the bottom. So if you ever can't see what I'm typing, just say stop. I'll refresh the screen or something. But so we're doing TDD. We're going to start building a web application using Django. What's the first thing that we do? What? Ah, yeah, okay, exactly. Good, someone's already done the pre-reading. So the first thing we do, even before we install Django, is we're going to write a test. We're going to write a test using Selenium. Ooh, Selenium, it's scary. It's not scary, it's simple. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to be 4 lines long. Come on, this is going to be amazing. So we're going to go from Selenium import web driver, something like that. Meow. And nerves don't help the typing skills. Okay. And then we want to open an actual browser window. So we're going to go browser equals WebDriver dot Firefox. Okay, I asked everyone to have that installed, so I'm sure it is. And then we're going to go browser dot get HTTP //localhost colon 8000. Almost there. And then assert Django in browser .title. And, yep, you get a prize, sir. So that is the simplest possible Selenium test from Selenium import WebDriver. We start up a browser. We set it to go and get the web server on localhost because we want Django to be running on our local PC. And we're going to say, okay, is it really running Django? In which case the web browser's title should at least say Django in it somewhere. That is the simplest possible imaginable Selenium functional test. It's the first thing we write even before we install Django. What was the question? Yeah. So you should git checkout workshop. Does he want the workshop branch inside the repository, and that cleans everything out for you. So try git checkout workshop. So that's the code there. You should have it in the PDF handout. So I'm just going to extend. Let's try running it. What will happen if I run it? Python functional test.py, bing, it brings up an actual web page. Wow, a real web browser and everything. It's like magic, and there's nothing running, so it just goes problem loading page, and if I close it, I'll then see that it goes, oh, assertion error. And that is an expected failure, ladies and gentlemen. That is the first TDD win. We wrote a test, and it fails as expected. You haven't got any kind of web server on localhost, and already we can give ourselves a pat on the back. We're doing TDD. This is amazing. Okay. So basically, hands up as soon as you've written that test and you've seen this error, assertion error. Okay, congratulations. So everybody else, I'm just going to run around and start helping. Peter, you can do the same. And so I'll just again inspect like this. You guys have got assertion error, that works. Fantastic. All right, yeah, I'm blind. How are you guys doing? Okay, just start it up. Okay, give it up. How about you, sir?
Yeah, look good. Got the browser.
Fine.
Can't connect because it's not there.
Exactly. So you can close this window. One of the annoying things is it doesn't close the window for you. And there you go. Perfect. That's your assertion error. You're on top of it, sir. How about you guys? Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Zoop. How are we doing? Yeah, perfect. Okay. And then you're steaming ahead. You know, oh, cheetah. What about you, ma'am? Is it okay? Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah. And are you guys pairing together, or how's it going to work?
Not really yet, but we will somehow collaborate.
Okay. Well, what I'd like you to do is, at this desk, if you could just choose one person to do each bit, And once you've got it working on one computer, try and move along to the others. But just like if you all focus on doing the task as a desk, and then move on to getting it working on all computers.
The EuroPython with my other network.
Yeah. Internet is crap. Yeah, that's going to happen. You're all right. Don't worry too much about the HTTPS, GitHub, HTTP. No, that looks correct. Yeah, you can try it again? Okay, it might just be that the internet is broken. But you don't need the repository, really. You can do most of this stuff without it, and we can try later. How about you, sir? You've
have Selenium.
well, there you go. What about you? You've got Selenium, sir? There you go. Kick off pip install Selenium and Django, and then share his computer until it's ready over here. Yeah? He's got a Dvorak keyboard, so probably he'll have to do most of the typing. But sit next to each other, and then you can collaborate, okay? And so just make sure that it works on one computer, and then you've already achieved a task, and then try the other one. Okay? How about you guys? Have you got it? Assertion error? Wonderful. Yeah, fine. Okay. And how about you guys? Have you got an assertion error?
Right.
Look, that's pretty. Nice colors. And does it say assertion error? Does it?
Thanks, not, it's, I don't change some of the colors, so I don't remember the escape. Escape is something like, or how to change?
Yeah, it is set. So just go color equals. I think you don't need the set.
Color.
I don't think you need set. No, in fact, you just go color,
Okay.
color desert or something.
Color, probably L4.
Ah, lovely. Cool. All right, so you haven't got Selenium, so do a little pip install Selenium and Django, and in the meantime, work on this computer. Will you do this for me? So just share this computer for now, because it'll take too long to get everything installed. Okay. How are you getting on, sir?
Good, I just have a small error in my virtual environment.
Oh, yeah. Never use virtual M's. They're more trouble than they're worth. Virtual M's are in chapter...
If I don't do that, I mess up my whole...
Ah, that's true. We use a virtual... Virtual M's are in chapter 8 of the book, so not in chapter 1, which is where we are now. How about you guys? Is it okay? Oop. Sorry? Oh, okay. Check out the workshop branch. So inside... okay, so that's the wrong tutorial. If you... that's the one you want to clone. Oh, okay, so that might be my fault that I gave you guys the wrong one. Let's try that. But it might take a minute. How about you? Is it working? Yes. Have you got assertion error?
I got this error.
Yep, that's it.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. So maybe it'll take a few minutes for this to finish. Will you start working on this one and then catch up later? Is that okay? Yep, perfect. Is that going to be all right? Can you guys share one computer for now, and then we'll do the rest? Okay. You guys are okay?
Just started Firefox.
Yep. And does it give you assertion error when it runs?
Yeah.
Cool. That's what we want. How about you guys? All right. And how about here? Assertion error. Look at that. Fantastic. All right. And you guys are okay up here?
Yes.
Is it okay? Fine. All right, good. That was the first test. Aha! It's going to get faster and faster as everyone has all the stuff installed. So what do we do next? It's saying, oh, there's no Django in the browser title. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Yes. How? Who knows how you start Django? Well, I haven't actually got Django installed, have I? So we have to start a new project, which is like this, and I'm going to call it Superlists. And then if I do tree, so we're going to run this command, django-admin.py, start project, superlists, because our lists aren't going to be ordinary lists, they're going to be super. And that will give us a set of folders, one called superlists and another one side that also called superlists. Oh, actually, hang on. This is all wrong. Ooh, we want to go django-admin.py, start project superlist, dot. All right, so this is the way I want to do it. Okay, that's important. Django-admin.py, start project superlists, dot. And so the handout does say this is important. The reason I want to do this is I want the project to be in the same folder that I'm in right now. Okay? And that should now look like this. So I'm just going to show that again. So that's the command there, start project superlists. Okay. The reason I'm putting it in that folder is so that we can do checkouts and stuff, and it's going to work later on. But there we go. So that's going to create a folder called superlist with a few whiskey.py, dunderina.py. It's going to create manage.py. That's Django's Swiss Army knife for people who've never done Django. Manage.py is like the Swiss Army knife. So that gets us Django installed. And then the next step is to run the Django development server, which you can do like this, Python manage.py run server. And I'm going to put it with a little and. But you could do this command in a separate console window because we're going to leave it running. And then you can rerun our test, Python functional test.py. Ta-da! And that pops up a window that says it worked. That proves that Django's installed. That's Django's sort of hello world. And then the Python functional test no longer says assertion error, and that is our very first functional test pass, ladies and gentlemen. Another massive pat on the back. We've installed Django using TDD, making sure we had a functional test all the way. So, so what do we got? Should I do a history or something? Can that help? It's just chaos. There's that one, and there's that one. Okay. How you doing? So that means run in the background, which means you can run two browsers in the same console. But I would just run it in a separate console window. It's simpler. Yeah, no, so leave that one. That's a bit clearer. I should probably do that too, but I can't use. Yes, but then it spews output all. It's a bit messy. There you go. Okay, cool. Does that work when you run the functional test? Does it then say, okay? And then close this. And he's happy. See, it no longer says assertion error, and that counts as a pass. How about you? Does it work?
One tab with the output.
Perfect. Perfect. And it works. And there you go. That's great. All right. Oh. No, that's all right. Oh, okay. So what do we got in here? LS? Show me the contents of the folder. All right. So if you do, let's do a git checkout workshop. In fact, copy it. What have you got? Yeah, git checkout workshop. Where's your functional test.py? It's going on. That's it. And then now ls. Okay. And then git status. Okay. I'm surprised that functional tests. Let's do an rm-rf of functional underscore tests. So there's too many files in here. I'm not sure why. So we want to, can I?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm just going to tidy up, but nothing in here is important. Okay. Zip. So. Yeah, so I think we want to remove this one, the directory, and this one, and this one, and then we start again. So that you just have functional test.py, which we can look at. Where's dot? Yeah, okay, so that's our test. That's all we really want. So just delete everything apart from the test and the PDF, and then start again with Django admin start project.
Okay, and I stay in workshop.
Stay in this directory, yeah. I think that will work.
No, in this branch, workshop.
Yes, in the workshop branch, yes. Yep. You guys are okay? Okay. You guys are okay? How are we doing over here? Oops, sorry. No, I'm just kicking the table. How about here? Good? Okay. How about here, sir? Oh yeah, so I'm suggesting you do a commit. Anybody that's bored, I've got some instructions on how to do a git commit at the end of the PDF for this chapter, so you can do that to keep yourselves busy. Never done a git commit? But some people haven't. I thought that would be useful. How are you doing, sir? Okay. Just installing Firefox.
No, I'm upgrading it while I'm
Oh.
waiting for the thing to...
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, we'll get there. And so Peter's helping there. You guys okay? Yeah. Okay. Fine. Everyone. Hang on. Are you guys okay?
Yes, this works. This is,
Okay. Cool. Have you got the PDF?
he's got it.
Okay. Cool. Ta-ta-ta. You've got the PDF. You guys are okay? Django admin pi start project superlist dot is the one to install Django.
I don't remember the address to cloud.
Oh right. So it might be in the PDF. If you've got the PDF, the address is in it, I think, in the preface. Here we are. Oh, there you go. We just went cloning the repo then. So, yeah, that's the one. All right. Are you guys okay?
Doesn't find Selenium even though I installed it.
Okay. When did you install it? Yesterday?
No.
Just now.
Just now.
Just now. Just
And-
pip install Selenium and now we had it.
Are you using a virtual env or anything like this? Are you using a virtual env? No, good. Good.
We're just debugging it. I mean,
That's weird.
can you go to user
and you-
local then local lib, user local lib, Python 2.7.
Uh-huh. You guys are great. Okay. Fine. Okay, so has every desk managed to get as far as the passing functional test and they've got Django installed and that works? Is that all great? Did anyone do the git commit like in the nice PDF instructions? Yeah, good, all right, real programmers. Okay, so what's next? All right, well, so this is all right, this functional test, okay? It's the simplest possible functional test, but it's annoying in many ways. First of all, when it passes, like just now, there's no message saying well done. So that's kind of psychologically sort of depressing. We wanted to at least put a smiley face or something, I don't know. Secondly, it leaves a window sort of lying around in the ether, which you have to manually close, which is annoying. And thirdly, if I want to extend it, because I don't want Django, just Welcome to Django is not a great website. We want something a little bit more useful than that. So if I want to now extend this test, if I wanted to say, where are we, so say, okay, well, instead of, obviously the actual title of my application shouldn't be Django, it should probably be something like, talking about lists anyway, right? So, hop. So it should say something like there should be lists in the browser title, right? And so now if I run that, it just get assertion error. Like that is not the most helpful error message, okay? It'd be nicer if it said, oh, I couldn't find lists. This is what it actually said. Now, we could write our own custom error message for assert, but in fact, people have been doing testing in Python for a little while. There are tools to help us here, and that tool is called unit test. So I think we want to convert our functional test to being a unit test, and it will have all sorts of useful tools. So let's do that. I'm going to do some more live coding, which is a massive mistake when you're in front of a bunch of people, and you're going to knock over the projector. So, but I mean, this is just to point out that it's easy to do, right? Okay, so 5G, yes, true. So we're going to go, yes. Yep. But then you can't see my pretty face. Okay. import unit test. Okay, how about that? Aha! And then we're going to put a class. Yes, everything should be in a class. So let's say homepage test. And it's going to inherit from unit test.test case. Okay. And so what we want to do is, there are some little useful methods in unit tests called setup and teardown that let you do some setup-y stuff and some cleaning up stuff before and after each test. So we'll use them. Let's have setup. That looks like this. Self. Hup. And that will be the thing that starts our browser. How about that? We'll have self.browser so we can use it later. Okay. And then similarly for teardown, tear. You're a typo. Hang on. Yeah. Where's my typo? Oh yeah. Oh, well spotted, man. Okay. Self.browser.quit. Haha. Okay, so that at least will close our browser at the end of the test no matter what. And then we're going to go test. Let's see. Home page looks okay, or whatever. Or, in fact, we're going to be talking about, you should have descriptive names for your tests. So maybe our very first test is going to check that you can start a new list from the home page. So test starting a new list from the home page. Aha! Okay, nobody ever died of typing too much. All right. Not in good method names. All right, so self.browser.get, and then we can put the assert. All right, so far that code is doing exactly the same thing. I can't spell unit test. One. Thank you. All right. So we can go self dot, and so then unit test has got all sorts of useful assertion methods like this. XP. X. Zip. Self.browser title. Okay. All right. So that's the conversion there. From a regular test to unit test. And now, if I run it, it'll have a much more helpful error message. So I just do that quickly and then I'll show you the code again. Come on. You want to all see it? What? Did I edit the wrong one? What happened here? See? Yeah. Oh, okay, yep. And then we actually have to run it, which looks like this. Run the main. Unit test.main. Okay, so that little if done name equals main, that's the thing that's actually going to run the test. Let's try it. Window. What? Okay, yeah, no, that's wrong. Assert in takes a comma. So first thing is what's in self-browser. This should be in self.browser title. Okay, how about now? Perfect. A much more useful error message, some cool ASCII art sort of names for the test, tells you how long it took, tells you number of failures. Brilliant. Unit test is awesome. And that is us having upgraded our do nothing simple test to a proper one. Haha. Okay. So, I've also decided to ask it to check for lists instead of checking for Django. So those are the things you should be doing. Convert it to unit test and ask it to search for lists. And then the expected error message is text list not found in welcome to Django. Good. Who's got that already? No one. Excellent. Work hard. So who was over there debugging? Okay. How's it going here? Okay. All right, guys, are we ready to move on? You guys are? Are you okay? Almost? Yeah. Fine. Okay, so that's it. So what have we done so far? We've made a functional test, we've converted it to unit test, and we're getting ready to write an action. Wait, okay, there's a question. Yes, sir. Okay, it is working or it's not working? Oh, okay. Just a moment. Awesome. Okay, that was a fun bug there. He accidentally had a empty Python file called unittest.py in the same directory as his, and that was breaking everything, as you might imagine. Okay, so who was reading the PDF and snuck on ahead and trying to get ahead of the crowd? Who's cheating? Anyone? Yeah, keen but naughty. No book voucher. Okay. We're going to say lists. All right, well, so there you go. We've got a failing functional test. And now, really, it's time to start building our application. Not just welcome to Django, but like we're going to have a page that's about lists. It's going to be awesome. Django structures things into projects and apps. So for the new people to Django, this is like introduction to Django stuff. A project is for like your whole website. And then Django suggests you have apps for little components of your website, things that, kind of are self-contained. So maybe our website is going to have a lists app, and then maybe it will have an accounts app, and it might have a forums app, I don't know. And the theory is, in fact, that maybe if you build a good app in one project, maybe you'll even reuse it in another project. But portable, I've never actually done that, but I'm told that it can happen. Okay. So we're going to start an app. The way we do that is using manage.py. Manage.py, the wonderful Swiss Army knife of Django. Can everyone read that? Python, manage.py, start, app, lists. We're going to call it lists. So yeah, because it's about lists. What's that done? Tree. Well, there's always ASCII return. Where's my little tree with the ignore ASCII docs going on? Yeah. Okay. So we've now got, in our folder, you should still have super lists, and next to it is now a little app called lists. Apps start out with these three files: models.py, views.py, and, of importance and concern to us, tests.py. Okay, so that was Python, manage.py, start app, lists, and then we should get that folder. I'll let you guys do that. Yes? So superlists is a special module that contains kind of project-wide settings. So that contains settings.py, which is the only copy of settings.py for your whole website, for the whole project. Whisky.py is for deployment. urls.py is the general URL configuration. Whereas lists, you might have many of them, and so they will all look the same. This one is unique. Okay. And this one is the name of the project, and that's the name of the app. Okay. So what I'm going to go and do is go and look at the test.py, see what they've got in there. So we go fg, copy, mf tests.py, okay. So this is what it looks like. And what it is like Django just trying to encourage us to do a bit of testing. And it's got a really simple test, right? And what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to deliberately just try that, huh? How about that? Let's see what it thinks about that. Okay, so what I'm doing there is deliberately making a test that'll fail, just to make sure that, it's really there and it works. So how do I run tests in Django? What we're going to do is use the Django test runner to do unit tests. Not everyone works like that, but I think it's a good way to get started. And we go python manage.py test, and it says, Django, find all the tests that you know about and run them, please. Whoa, what, who, 400 and what, eh? Okay, it went mental, but thankfully, like often in Django, there's a useful error message in the traceback, and it's saying, well, I don't know how to run tests unless you configure a database. Settings.database is improperly configured. So we've done start app lists, we've looked at test.py, we've deliberately broken it. Let's go and fix settings.py. So yep, sure, settings.py. There we go, and we want to go to database, here it is. I'm going to switch on SQLite 3. So just, whenever we're doing TDD, we try and make the fewest tests possible at any one time. Zip. And we'll try it again. Much happier. Look at this. I love it when computers spew out loads of output, because then I can make the little noise of mother from Alien. Okay, so there we go, haha. But the weird thing is, first of all, okay, we've only got one test as far as we know, and it's run 479. And apart from that, apart from expected failures equals, it's not actually showing me an error with 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3. So there's a couple of things wrong here. Now, why? You can tell Django to run just the tests for one of your apps, right? So if I want to run just the lists app, I could just do this. Manage.py test list. There is no list. What? I just made it. Okay, I just made start app list. Why is this thing? Well, you see, you have to tell Django twice. that, you know, not only do we want to do startup list, but you really, really mean it. And so you actually have to open up settings.py again and find installed apps, which is here. Yeah, and then add the name of our app to the bottom. There you go, like that. And then run it again, and now we'll get there. So that is what we got there. This is our first expected unit test failure. And we started a new app, and we've added it to settings.py, and we've added SQLite 3 as our database type. Okay. So we've now got a functional test and a unit test. There's a bit that I skipped over, which I'd like to do now, which is about comments in functional tests. So you might have seen that if you're reading the PDF. But basically, one of the good things about, why am I doing functional tests and unit tests? How are they different? Functional tests are really about testing your application from the point of view of the user. So it's really checking the whole thing works, and that's why we use Selenium, because it drives a real web browser, which is what the user would use, and it clicks on, and so it tests the whole application from their point of view. And what that does is, depending on how you develop, this would map quite well to what we call a user story in extreme programming. Many other methodologies have them. It's basically like stating the requirements for your application in terms of what the user can do when they come and visit your application. The user should be able to come in and see a screen with the following buttons and click it, and then this should happen, and they interact with it in the following ways. And so what we find is there's a really good mapping between functional tests and user stories, and the way we sort of express that is that we write our user stories as comments in a functional test file, and then the implementation of the test is just beneath the comments. So I think I've got a way of doing that as a checkout. Let me just have a look. Well, let's just try it. Come on, I think I can handle this. Git, checkout. Where are we? Chapter 2 -- functional test.py. What about chapter 3 then? No? Origin chapter 2. Aha! -- is for a single file. So you guys may or may not have to do that, but let's just go and have a look. And I'll show you. Oops. Yep. Okay. And we want functional tests. Load. Okay. And it should look something like this. So our test starts to look a little bit like this instead. And so what you would do is you'd sit down with your team, or sit down with your client, or whoever, or maybe it's just you, and I write out in human language, what should the user be able to do with my website? And we're going to keep that in comments, and then each time we have an assertion, we fill in a little bit of Selenium code to mark out that assertion. So it's important to give your functional test user a name, make them into a real human. I call mine Edith. And the functional test users have got a very particular sort of psychological makeup. What they tend to do, for example, is they tend to get everything wrong in every single possible way before they eventually get it right, because you have to check all of the form validation. So, Edith in the login test, for example, logs in, and she tries, first of all, submitting without entering a username or a password. Edith goes, oh gosh, that was annoying. Let me try now with a username but no password. Well, now let me try with a password but no username. Well, now let me try with a username and a password, but the password confirmation doesn't match. Now let me try it with passwords and password confirmation matching, but not ticking the terms and conditions box. But eventually she gets it right, Edith, eventually. So there you go, and today she doesn't have to do anything too complicated. She comes to the website, she notices it's all about to-do lists, so that's our little assert to do in the browser title. She's invited to enter a to-do item straight away, so we're going to have some kind of enter a to-do item box right on the front page. She types buy peacock feathers. It's good to have a little personality. Edith likes tying fly fishing lures, okay? And when she hits enter, the page updates, and there you go, it appears like number 1 item in your list, buy peacock feathers. There's still a text box, and later she's going to do something like, use peacock feathers to make a fly, because Edith is very methodical, okay? It's a good user for a lists application. So that's what we do, is, so we would write it out like that, and then as we want to progress, you can write more and more of this test. You don't have to write all of the, so you might want to write most of the comments on in one go, so you've thought about what your app's going to do. But you don't have to write all of the implementation. So when you've sort of run out of time, you can write self.fail just to remind yourself you haven't finished. And so you'd be working at the moment on making sure that we can get at least as far as that self.fail. And then I might write some more assertions here, like look at the page header, look at the input box, etc. So that'd be the procedure. Start writing your functional tests as comments, and then start filling it in as you go. This is good enough for now. So you guys can probably just skip this part. I think in the PDF there's some instructions on how you could check it out from the repo if you can be bothered. For now we've just got this much. And what we want to do is get back to this sort of to-do, or lists that should be in the browser title. It should say something about lists. So we've built our lists app, and so now we're going to start writing some code to actually have some HTML for our web page. So what file should we edit next, everyone? Who knows a little bit of Django? What should we edit next to get some right HTML for our front page? Yeah, possibly. Any other answers? Yeah, no, the answer is tests.py. Yes, of course. So we're going to have functional tests, but test the whole application from the point of view of the user. But we also use unit tests, or at least in the way that I'm teaching this, I'm trying to teach a full suite of testing tools. And the idea is that functional tests and unit tests have different roles. So functional tests are really there for testing the application from the point of view of the user, and unit tests are for really testing your code from the point of view of the programmer. And they have different purposes. Functional tests check your application really works. Unit tests are actually about trying to write good code. So they force you, for example, to think about your code before you write it. So because you think about how shall I test this code, it forces you to think about that function or that class from the outside, and it maybe encourages you to write a nice API for it. There's all sorts of other benefits, like if you find a function is hard to test, it's probably because that function is too complicated, and you're going to break it up into smaller functions, and so the unit tests kind of help you to think about structure. And when you've got a complex function, obviously writing a unit test will actually help you to make it bug-free, because you'll spell out all of the possible error conditions, and when you want to later refactor it, you'll be guaranteed that it still works and things like that. So that's why I teach both unit tests and functional tests. And like in this book, in this tutorial, I teach like pretty extreme TDD. And I say, look, you can actually unit test absolutely everything, and I'll teach you how. And that's what I'm going to do next with like a couple of unit tests for the web server. So Django, like any web server, has got to do two jobs. It's got to take users' requests. Requests come in, the user says, give me a particular URL, and then the web server has to decide what HTML to give back in response to that request. Typically in Python, what we have is functions. Different functions will respond with different types of HTML. And so one job it's got to do is map between URLs and functions, like what URL goes to what function. And then secondly, you have to have some functions that actually return HTML. And we're going to unit test those two things. First, mapping from a URL to a function. And secondly, can we build a function that returns some good HTML? So let's do that. And I think the way it's going to work is in test.py. Here it is. Okay, so we can tidy all this up. Delete paragraph, class simple test. This is going to become home page test. We're going to say chump, and we're going to say test. We're going to start with, well, let's start with the URL test, because that's the most logical thing. Step one is we take the URL for the root of the site, and we find a function for it. So let's say functions to return. So in Django, you have this like this MVC pattern. Who knows what MVC is? Okay, so Django has like a sort of MVC, except that templates are like the views, and the views are actually the controller, but the models are the model. But anyway, it's pretty much that idea. And views.py is where you keep your view functions. So we could import. We're going to imagine that in our lists app .views function, we're going to import. There's going to be a function there called homepage. All right, and we want to say root URL resolves to home page function. So this is a pretty extreme unit test. A lot of people don't do this, but I would encourage you to, because whilst the URL might start simple, in future it can get complicated, and this sort of unit test can help. So to resolve URLs, Django uses a function called django.core.url resolvers import resolve. Yeah. Okay. So this is what's going to happen. When a user asks for the URL slash, Django is actually going to call internally this resolve function, which is the actual mechanism that maps for Django between URL strings and its sort of back end. And it returns a result called found. And our self.assert equal is we're going to say, well, the function that resolve finds should be our home page function. Okay, there you go. Now, this is a pretty abstruse unit test. I'm really doing this to make a point, which is that you really can unit test absolutely everything. Once you've been through this workshop, maybe you want to take a look at my book, you've practiced a bit of TDD, you've learned all the techniques, you might decide in your own lives that you're not going to bother to test the resolve function. That's up to you. What I would say is a really simple unit test like this for a really simple function doesn't take that long to write. And there is one thing, like psychologically speaking, when you're doing unit testing and you decide, oh, well, I'm only going to test complicated stuff, then you've got a psychological problem, which is how do you decide when things are complicated enough? Like everything starts off simple, right? And so you go, oh, it's too simple, I'm not having any tests. And then later on you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to maybe add an if. You're like, oh, okay, well, it's got no tests, I won't start now. It's just an if. And then maybe you add an extra function and a for loop, and like pretty soon your function grows into something big and complicated, but because you never had tests, each little incremental step was quite small, but now you're a boiled frog, right? You've got a really big, complicated function, and it's got no tests. So that's my advice, is that if you've got a simple thing, write a simple test, it won't take that long, and then you've always got that test, so if it ever grows complicated, it's really easy to add more tests for it. There we go. So, who knows what will happen if we try and run this? Yes. Okay, let's find out. Is that really true? Python. Did I save it? I can't remember if I saved it. Yeah. Python, manage.pytest lists. Correct. So how do we fix this? Run? Okay, yeah, let's go and do that. All right, so views.py. So we're now in what's called the unit test code cycle, which is where we flick between making changes to our code and rerunning the unit test to check everything's okay. And the kind of TDD that I'm teaching is that you should make the absolute minimal code change possible to get the tests over their current problem. So what's the minimum code change I can make here to say get this import error passing? Correct. And so I will actually do that. All right? So really homepage equals none, and look at that, the test already gets that much further. And now starts saying, all right, at least I can import something. I don't know how to resolve the URL for slash. Now, homepage equals none is a bit of an extreme example. I'm teaching a methodology here, but often we actually do this at work. And so look, when you're comfortable and you know what you're doing and you're not tired and you've got a simple fun, maybe you can skip a couple of steps, all right? But what this is really all about is when you get into some really complex coding and you're a bit more scared and you've got some business critical application, going step by step like this can make absolutely sure that everything is covered by tests and that you never go wrong. So that's why I'm teaching it in this sort of way. And the other thing is that we often do this at work when we're pair programming. We really do write homepage equals none because it should be very quick to just skip between your tests and your views, and it's always good practice for the times that it goes harder. So homepage equals none. It doesn't know how to resolve it. And the next thing we go into is Django lovers. What do we do next? So it's saying 404. You asked me for the slash. For what? So what? Oh, there you go. Exactly. So urls.py is the place where Django maps between URLs and functions. So here's the default thing. I've just commented that out. This is like a default view. Let's just see if that does anything, whether that's at all helpful. So I've done nothing but uncomment it. And now it's saying, well, there's no such thing as superlist.views.home. Right, well, we can fix that. And we actually want lists, .views.home page, isn't it? Okay, how about now? Zip. List of views at home page. View is not callable. So finally it's complaining that homepage equals none is not an appropriate view. So that justifies us in changing that. Views. Def homepage. Up. Ta-da! And I mean that's still, like that is absolutely not a new view function yet. It needs to take an argument. But for just that little bit, this is all we needed to do. Define that as a function, modify urls.py. And so then we're quite sure that every single line of code here is justified by a test. So that's the idea. As long as everyone's got the PDF, I'm going to move on to the next unit test as well, and then sort of turn it over to you. So the next thing we want to do is try and make sure that the homepage function actually does something useful. Okay. So we're going to have test home page returns correct HTML. So now we're actually going to call the home page. We're going to pass in a request, and it's going to give us a response. Okay. Why? Okay, I've done a semicolon again. Look at me. Request equals HTTP request. From HTTP import. Okay, so this is more like the kind of code that we're going to be testing. Home page request. So this is what's going to happen to Django is once it's resolved the URL, it's going to take this HTTP request object, which is Django's representation of a browser's request for a page. It's going to pass it along to the home page function. That home page function is going to turn a response. That's what's going to go to the user's browser. And in our unit test, we're going to say, right, now, what are the characteristics of this response that we need to get our functional test to pass? The functional test was complaining that it didn't say lists, so we're going to want at least that inside our response as HTML, there's going to be some kind of lists. So that's going to be something like a title to do lists. Yep, end title. End title. Yep. Okay. And that is going to be in response.content. So the .content attribute is the actual HTML of the response. And then apart from that, we might just have another couple of assertions to make sure that it is valid HTML. So it would go along, I'm sure we're going to say, that starts with, so we might say, okay, well, so we'll need at least an open tag and a close tag, right? Ship. There we go. So this is now a very simple unit test for the HTML of our home page. We're going to say, okay, well, it should start with HTML. It should end with end.html, if I actually get that right. And it should have this title tag. Okay. And in a moment, we'll see how to change this into using a template. But for now, this is the kind of thing that we can get our view off the ground, start returning some kind of real HTML that the browser can use. Okay, let's try running that. Zip. All right, fine. Homepage takes no arguments. Zip. And then views, homepage, request. So that's the minimal change to get that to pass. Takes no arguments. Okay. Now it's not returning anything. None type has no attribute content. How do we give it that? We're going to return. You'll surely be unsurprised to hear. We're going to go from Django HTTP import HTTP response. Okay. And we're going to go return HTTP response. Ship. Same. Now it's saying, okay, you don't have an HTML at the beginning. Ship. HTML. Ship. Yep. Ship. Same thing. And so this is the kind of unit test code cycle, which you'll get into after a while, which is tiny change, back to running a test, tiny change, back to running a test. And at each stage, you're only writing what the tests want you to. So now we need title to-do list. Well, maybe I'll even cut and paste this just to save a little time. I can't. And so, to-do lists. Zip. Okay, fine. Ends with back HTML. Zip, zip, zip. All right, how about that? Should that just about do it? Okay. Can we try the functional test again? Finish the test. Aha! And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. We've actually written a view function that returns some real HTML and has actually got a new title. That is properly an actual web page. It's a web page with no content and just a page title, but it's fully unit tested and fully functionally tested. So that's about that. Now, obviously in real life, you don't really want to be building up HTML as strings in functions. We're going to move on to using templates next. But I'd like you guys all to get about this far. Who's already jumped ahead and done this? What about you, sir? You're looking like, you're totally on top of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. What about you guys? Okay, so I'll let you get on with that. Who's already got this far? Finish the test. Yep. Fine. If you need somewhere to copy and paste stuff from, find the PDF in my repo, and then it's the easiest place to make sure you've got all the right assertions and stuff. The PDF in the repo also has every single step of like test code, so you can compare it with what you want to do. Does anybody else have any questions at this stage? Fine. Da-da-da-da. Okay. How much time until the break? Half an hour? 25 minutes, perfect. Okay. All right, guys. I'd like to, let's see, where are we? Okay, so we've got a functional test. We've got 2 different types of unit test. But there's something kind of wrong with our unit tests, right? We're sitting there building up HTML as like a string inside a Python function. And secondly, we're doing something you really shouldn't do in unit tests, which is testing constants. So there's no point in having like a piece of code that says wibble equals 3, and then having a test that goes assert wibble equals 3. All right, that's just useless. There's no point in having like your tests and your real code be exactly the same thing, just with the word assert in front. So don't test constants is one of the rules of testing. And yeah, in general, you know, we want to unit test everything, but it has to be useful. So what we're really looking for is as soon as you've got, you know, kind of a bit of configuration or a for loop or an if or something where it's obvious that you could maybe get this wrong, or it might grow more complicated in future, that's the kind of thing that we want to test for. So don't test constants. So we don't want you know, our view to return an arbitrary string and then say assert that the view's response is a string. One thing we could do is turn that into a constant and then like say homepage HTML in views.py could be a constant, and we could import that in test.py and assert the function returns the same constant, but we're not going to repeat 2 strings in 2 tests. But what's even better than this is that we don't want to bloody well be writing HTML as a long string in Python. We want to use templates. We would like to have syntax highlighting when we write HTML. And so that's the next thing that I want to show you guys. So what we're going to do here is we're going to just replace our current code with some code that does exactly the same thing in a different way. And so that is refactoring. And refactoring is something for which you absolutely need tests. If you're doing refactoring and you haven't got tests, you're not really doing refactoring, you're doing something else, which is just messing about in the dark. I've done loads of it, and it's kind of fun, but you know, mostly you're just going to get yourself into worse trouble than you were before. Who here has ever seen Refactoring Cat? Refactoring Cat? Let's just, I could just, maybe you want to Google that. Refactoring Cat. And meanwhile, yeah, sorry, of course, you know, Googling anything at this stage is a ridiculous idea, but I think I've actually got, no, I've got a GIF of a Refactoring Cat, so don't bother Googling it. I think I've got him somewhere. Here he is. Wait, I've got him. I'm just going to let the GIF get around for you. And here he goes. Hup. Okay, Refactoring Cat, are you ready? Oh, no, God, what have I done? Oh, I can't get back out. Oh, there he is. That's Refactoring Cat there. Exactly. And so here we are to obey the testing goat. The testing goat says test first, all right? Test. What are goats, right? Goats climb mountains. In fact, goats climb trees. If you look at the beginning of my PDF, there's a picture of a goat up a tree. Very stable animals, and the way they do that is by going one step at a time, being cautious and being bloody minded. Okay? So obey the testing goat. Don't be like Refactoring Cat. All right, let's close that, or that'll just be the whole of the rest of the day. Huh? Very good. So, let's say that we wanted to, instead of using sort of raw HTML strings in here, let's suppose that we have a template. A template is like an HTML file which you can mess about a little bit with Python. And the place that we store those is in a little folder called template. So we can actually say, in our tests, let's go and find that template and render it and assert that the function returns that same rendered template. And then we're no longer testing a constant. We're saying, look, is this function returning the same thing as this template? And the way we can do that is we go render to string, I think is the name of the function. So let's see. We're going to have expected HTML equals render string home.html. That's it, right? I haven't got the PDF in front of me, so I'm trusting you guys to tell me if I'm going wrong here. Okay. Okay. So where do I import this from, anyone? Django.template. What? Template.loader, is it? Import render to string, is that right? Okay, I hope it is. All right, fine. So that's what we're going to do. All right, we want to replace these 3 tests here with just this one. But I'm going to do it in 2 stages by saying, let's make sure, then this will make sure that the code still does the same thing all the way through. So let's run that and see how it gets on. Python, test list. Okay, fine. There is no template home.html. Templates live in a folder called templates. There we go. Touch list templates home.html. All right. So I'm just going to put a file there. So first of it says there is no template home.html. Templates live in a folder called templates, appropriate enough, inside each of your app. Let's try that again. Ta-da! All right. So then it's saying, well, when we render our template, it's actually empty. So let's go and fill it in. So we want to go P, home, HTML, there we go. And so we're going to put our HTML in here instead of wherever it is at the moment. And we can even do nice things like add a sort of head tag, great, title, to-do lists, title, and head, and we'll go and HTML, and then we might even put a little body in here for later, and body. Okay, so now at least I've got an HTML that does something. Ship and up. Python manage.py test lists. So this is a little sneaky failure here, but what's happened here? First of all, one thing to just notice is that back here, response.content. Right. So it's now saying that the manual string that we've built up is not the same as our template, so we can swap that out. Hup. All right, use.py. Shoot. Sorry. Render. So instead of HTTP response, we go for Django.shortcuts, import. What do I import? Anyone? No, render to response is the old way. The cool new way is render, which actually takes a request and gives you that whole request context thing that gives you access to the user object in the template. Yeah, totally cool. Anyway, new way, it's render, and apart from doing loads of cool stuff, it is also shorter to type. So that is a win there as well. I mean, come on. Okay, Control L. So that's going to be our new code. We render the home.html. Try that instead. And then with this tiny little hack here, which is now that we're using a template, you might be sort of wondering, hang on, that's a weird, unexpected failure. We've definitely got an HTML at the end of our template here, right? Home.html definitely ends in HTML. So why is this not working? Well, one of the debugging techniques is when you get an unexpected failure like this, and this is like a bit cheap, but sometimes you just have to, is that you can use a print. And I'm going to use the repra here just to make sure that any white space is really clear. So response.content. Zip. All right, and what you'll see there is that my new HTML that's coming from the rendering the template actually ends with a trailing back end. There's a sort of trailing carriage return there. So what it's saying is my old test wanted it to end with just bang HTML, and instead it's now ending with a back end. So I could do something like ship back end. Zip. Perfect. So what have I done there is I've extended the test. It's told me to make sure I use a template, and then these 3 assertions have kept me honest. They've made sure that everything that was being tested before is still true of the template, right? And now that it all works, I can actually delete these 3 bits. And there was a gentleman asking earlier, how many assertions should you have in a unit test? The ideal is that each test should only have 1 assert, and so now we are. And so we've done 2 things. We've used a template which is better for our code, and we're no longer testing a constant. Ta-da! Zip, zip, and that all passes. And then just to make sure, whenever you do some refactoring like this, you'd rerun your functional tests to make sure everything still works there as well. Self.fail, same place we were before. What do you guys need to see? Maybe this guy. There we go. Fine, that's there. Later on, I hope we'll get through it after the break, and we'll actually see how to use the Django test client, which gives you even smarter ways of testing templates. But here I wanted to show you the render function and the render to string function, which are the kind of nuts and bolts of how that works, so that there's no magic. All right. Fine, so I'll let you guys do that. Switch out to using home.html as a template. Any questions? Yes, sir.
If you compare the rendered template against the rendered template in the browser,
Yeah.
you won't catch any mistake because they're the same. Because they're both rendered by Django.
Yes.
You don't
So
know
yeah. So
correct way.
what we'll do later, for example, like so ultimately a template like home.html is just a constant, right? This is just a long string. There's no code here, right?
Yeah.
So apart from for some really important things that I think I might get wrong, like making sure the correct URL is in there or something, I don't need to check the actual contents of this as long as it works in the functional test. What happens later, and one of the real powers of Django's template language, is I can now put Python variables in this. I could put a for loop and iterate through a list of items, which is what we'll do later on when we actually have our list of to-do items. And as soon as you've got a for loop in a template, that's logic. And once there's logic in a template, that's a candidate for being tested. So then, that's a good time when I'm no longer just comparing two rendered templates, but I'm really saying, was this template rendered in the right way? Did it have the right variables? Did it have the right, have I written my for loop correctly? All of those sorts of things. So I would say, don't test the contents of template, the raw HTML, test any logic that goes in there. No, all right. So we'll see later on that you can just swap this out for an assert home.html was the correct template, and we'll be able to do some assertions that check that for loops in templates are correctly written, and that's coming up. In my book, which is kind of what we're tracking now, we're at the moment in chapter 4. What else should I say at this point? Because there's quite a lot of nice discussions in chapter 4. Right, yes, okay, it's this. This is basically my big moan. When I was introduced to all this stuff, I'm like, you must be joking. Are you really going to write all these tests? Everything, functional tests and unit tests. And the answer is yes. I mean, this is a little bit what I was saying earlier. It's like a quick unit test, should be quite quick to write. You've got that whole thing about the psychological barrier. I've kind of been through this, haven't I? A simple test is a simple test, and it's there to make sure you've got a placeholder for when it becomes more complicated. And they do serve different purposes. The unit tests are there to make sure that your code is good, well-designed code, and the functional tests are there to make sure your application works. They serve different purposes. And finally, I'm teaching you guys this to the extreme level. You can always, in your own time, choose to say, well, I'm not going to do all the tests that Harry says. I'm just going to do some of them. That's absolutely up to you. What I'm hoping is that once you've practiced all this stuff, it's like a martial art, I guess, TDD. Right? What we're doing here is like a kata. So, a kata in a martial art is pointless. You're not going to hurt anyone by doing that. But what you are is getting those movements into muscle memory so that when you really need them, they come automatically. So I think of this as just good practice. And the other martial arts reference is obviously like any martial art, to actually get it done, you need a bad-tempered and unreasonable master. And that is the testing goat. So if you're ever thinking this is a bit pointless, just imagine there's a testing goat, like the little devil on your shoulder in a cartoon, just going, man, no, you must do tests. Huh? Yeah, okay. That's convincing. Fine. Okay, has everyone managed to swap out the home.html template? Wow. Like you guys are totally on top of this, huh? Did you guys all do it while I was doing it? Did you do it faster than I did? Is that what happened? Oh my God. Okay. So what's next in the whole story? Where are we? What do we want to do? We want to maybe flesh out the functional test. Who's not got the home.html working? Hands up. Okay. Just a couple. Yeah. So that hasn't changed much. Have you got the PDF, sir? Okay. So have a look in the PDF. That should have everything that we need at this point. I'll just make sure that I've got the right, and that's where you can tell what page we're on. We're in chapter 4. Has everyone seen page 21? Chapter 4, I've got a little illustration of what you should test. Yeah. Fine, there you go. Actually, page 22. So the next thing we want to do is start fleshing out our functional tests more and getting it to sort of test that this website actually has some stuff that we can do. So I'll show you that. Okay. So the next thing that we might do in our functional test is like the comment says that the page title and a header mention to-do list. So at the moment we haven't even actually got anything in the body of our HTML, so let's start this. And this is the very first Selenium function that we're going to learn about. So this is where the real power of Selenium comes. This is what you find yourself using most of your time, is using these find element functions. Have a look at the Selenium documentation when you get home. We'll see several of them today. But find element by tag name is find an element by HTML tag name. The most useful one probably is find element by CSS selector. And this allows us to make assertions about what is in the DOM, what is in the page that our user is looking at. So let's see if we can run that. So let's say, okay, well find me the H1 for the page and say that it should have the head string to do in as well as the title of the page. Yep. So if I run that, there is, okay, so this will crash out like this, and it's saying I'm unable to locate an element using the tag name method with H1 because there is no H1 on the page. And the good thing about where we are now with a template, because a template is a constant, if I want to go and make changes to my template, I don't need to write another unit test. I can just go ahead and do that. So if I find home.html, and we'll have an H1. Ooh. So that was the whole point of having that sort of switch from having strings to unit tests, is that now that we've got home.html is just effectively a constant, I can change that without having to rewrite unit tests. Okay, to do is not foo. All right, that's really working. Change tills this, and to do lists. And maybe, can I say this? Ta-da! Okay, fine. Let's put a self.fail there so we don't forget. Okay. So those are the next steps. Do a little self.browser.find element by tag name H1. That returns an HTML element. It has a .text attribute, and assert that we've got to do in that as well. We might even start fleshing out the rest of the FT. So what's she going to do? She's going to go something like... So where are we? All right, we've got that. And so once we've got a header started, we might do the next little interesting bit of Selenium would look like this. We want her to be able to actually have a, sort of submit a new to-do item. So we're going to find an input box, and this time we're going to use find element by ID, which is another good way of finding things on pages. We're going to say, ooh, it should have a little helpful placeholder thing. And that's the placeholder attribute in HTML gives you a little grayed out bit of suggestion text. That'd be nice. And then we're going to send keys, which is, has anybody here ever used the old Selenium? Selenium, Selenium 1, I guess, or before WebDriver? Anybody? Oh yeah, no, I'm not thinking of the Selenium ID, but that's kind of cool. So the old Selenium, basically the sort of send keys function just did not work at all, and it wouldn't fire all the JavaScript events, so that when you typed in keys, it would just magically fill that in. But if you wanted the browser to actually notice JavaScript keystrokes, you had to separately fire off events, and it was a nightmare. The new Selenium is wonderful. So this send keys function will not only type things into the browser, but also all the JavaScript stuff will happen. So this is really like the user actually typing those things. So if I later write some magical JavaScript that's going to pop up stuff to really distract Edith, that will actually be activated by this. And she's going to say, oops, send keys. Right, okay, so this is her actually typing the stuff. You've got a special keys.enter attribute for her just hitting enter. It's a nice simple UI here. And then finally, we've got find element by ID again. So we go and find the table element. Then the other thing, we've seen in one element which has a .text attribute, so you can check on the text for an attribute. Each element also has a whole load of Selenium-y functions. So you can say, oh, once I found a table, give me all its rows. So table dot find element, and careful, like this is an often occurring bug. There's a difference between find element t, which returns one thing, and find element s, which returns a list. And that's a very, very common mistake that I make all the time. And I'm just going to basically say, okay, find all the rows in the table and just make sure that at least one of them has this expected row text. Who's a beginner to Python? Okay, can you guess what the any function does? It's a little bit tough. It's a Boolean function. All right. So what it's saying is, this is a Boolean expression. A row text should equal that, and a list comprehension at the same time. So, and the any function will take an iterable and just say, is at least one of these true? So, any of these true? Does that make any sense? Okay. Are the beginners to Python, have you ever seen list comprehensions? Yeah. Okay. So that's that part. This is a list comprehension which says, for each row in the row of the table, I'm going to have this Boolean. Does the row text equal this? So that's going to give you a list of true or false values, right? Okay. And then the any function says, is any of these values true? Python is quite self-explanatory, but this one was a pretty mean double combination. This is the kind of thing where you write it and you're like, I'm pretty smart. Yeah, check that out. And the fact is that later in the book I realized that this wasn't that smart. It was actually pretty stupid and annoying, and I'm going to change it to something simpler. But for now I'm just demonstrating it as a way of showing, this is programmer hubris right here, which will be corrected, and I'm going to be eating humble pie in chapter 5. There we go. Then the other thing you need to know is this little new to-do item did not appear in table. That's an error message. So to say the first argument to an assert true is something that evaluates to true or false. And the second one is, well, if it isn't true, here's an error message that we'll see. Is there a question over there, sir? Nope? Okay. So, no, looking quizzical. All right. So I'm going to let you guys either copy and paste or copy that from the PDF, and then we'll try and run it. What does it say if you... Somebody's run this, presumably, by now. What does it say if you run it? Has anyone run this? Nope? Nope? Okay. All right, fine. All right, I'll let you catch up. Let's leave that there. Okay. All right. So if hey, look at this. When Selenium runs now, I'm just going to do this again. I actually get a thing that says start a to-do list. Ah, let's do that again. This is fun. Like we've actually got a page with some HTML, some text on it. That's quite exciting, isn't it? There we go. All right, so this fails at the moment saying, okay, you haven't yet got the ID new item element. So we can go into home.html and put that in. Shoop. Input ID equals ID new item. Functional test.py. Add the ID new item. Shoop. Doesn't have a placeholder. Ship. Placeholder equals enter a to do. Zip. Zip. Haha! Now we try and type it in by peacock feathers. There's no list table. Let's keep doing that. Table. ID equals ID list table. Ship. Zip. Type by peacock feathers. Wait. And bump. So this is our expected failure at this stage. We're going to make a few tweaks to the HTML. Those are all things that we can do without unit tests. And eventually it's going to get to here, which is saying, okay, well, now our challenge is that when Edith types something into this input box, we actually want to save it somehow. And that's going to require us actually sending the input over to the server, maybe saving it somehow, and then rendering back the table with her list items in. So that's what we're going to get to do next. Fine. So this is basically in the PDF. This is page 26 or so. Yep. And if you need any of the code for the functional test, it's on pages 22 and 23. Fantastic. So that's the expected failure for the end of chapter 4. Time's the break? Piano rehearsal? Perfect. Alrighty. Alright, so that's the expected failure for the end of chapter 4. The break is about now. We start again at 5:15. That's taken us through 4 chapters of my book already. How amazing. And the next 2 are where we're going to start actually saving stuff to the database, which is obviously the other big important part of Django, is having a database, saving items to it. And what we're going to do is go off down a bit of a blind alley on purpose and show how TDD can help you to recover from that and get you to the right solution in the end. How about a little bit of testing philosophy? Who knows who Kent Beck is? Kent Beck? So Kent Beck says testing is, or TDD is a little, or programming is a little bit like getting water from a well. Listen up, you! All right, philosophy happening here, like this is important TDD stuff. Okay, so Kent Beck, the great guru of TDD, says that programming is a little bit like getting water from a well. What it is like if you've got quite a shallow well and you've got quite a small bucket and quite a short piece of rope, you just dump the bucket in there, you pull it out, and like it was pretty easy, right? The problems happen when you've got a deep well, like a hard problem, and a long bit of rope, right? And you chuck the bucket in, and it's a big bucket, and you pull it up, and at first you're fine, right? Because you're pretty strong, and you're like, all right, but then after a while, you start to get tired, your muscles are beginning to ache, and like you're a little bit worried that you're going to let go of the rope and like become refactoring cat, right? And he says, so what TDD is it's a ratchet. Okay, it's a thing that you put your bit of rope through, or your cable, or your chain through, right? That lets you pull and go cling, 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 so that when you eventually do get tired, you can just let go, and all your progress is saved, right? The bucket just stays at its current level, and then when you've got a bit more energy, you can have another go. So it stops you from ever slipping backwards. That's a little TDD philosophy analogy there from Kent Beck. All right. So, are there any questions at this stage? Who is thinking, wow, this whole TDD thing, like that seems like a lot of effort. I mean, I don't know. Who's thinking that? Yes. There you go, an honest person. There, over there. There you go. Like, it's a lot of effort because we're all going through this together, a lot of us for the first time. I'm running around and explaining every single step. The way I learned this was a pair program with people who've been doing it for years. And this is, like, it's probably a lie to say that this is just as fast as regular coding. If like you're starting from scratch and you're trying to define a function to add 2 plus 2, some people will try and convince you that TDD is faster, but they're basically lying, right? But what TDD is faster in is it's faster in the long run. You've got this ratchet effect, which allows you to experiment. The fact that suddenly your code is covered with tests means that whenever you want to experiment with your code, whenever you want to refactor something, whenever you want to re-architect something, you can just go for it. You don't need to be scared. Like, it takes a lot of the psychological fear out of programming, and it just makes you so much more, it's just much more of a joy to program this way. So we go through these kind of motions of like doing tests first, and then and so that's like a little bit mechanical, but once you've made that part of your regular discipline, it really is quite a lot of fun. And then it's a lot faster than this when you're doing it in real life. Once you've learned to do it, you just flick between test code, test code, test code, and it's just as quick as coding, really. So there we go, functional tests, and then you never need to have to worry about breaking your app. Your tests will tell you. You can go to the pub. Who's ever heard of beer-driven development? Right. There you go. That's where what you do is you write all your tests, and once you've got all your tests written, you go to the pub and you get really drunk, and you come back and you can code completely hammered, but because you got tests, you can't go wrong. There we go. All right. So guys, yeah, try and get to this new item did not appear in table. If you need anything, it's on pages 22 and 26 is the pages where the code listings are. Is anybody struggling? I'll come around and answer any questions you have. And then otherwise, we've got a break until 5:15. 5:15, 17:15. Cool.